guys, welcome into another edition of the Shelby County High School Football Week in Review. As always, I'm Alec Etheridge, the sports editor here at The Reporter. What a great week we have to recap and look ahead to. This past Friday night, we had 3 top 10 matchups. 2 of those teams, Thompson and Briarwood, end up blowing out their opponent in a big win to make a statement on Friday night. We also had a top 6 battle between Hoover and Spain Park, big rivalry, one of the state's biggest, and it goes down to the final minute. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better game in that one. Outside of those top 10 battles, we had a rivalry between Helena and Pelham, so there's just a lot to look back at. We'll do that. We'll look ahead to more big region matchups this Friday night. We're also going to name our SCR Star of the Week, and there's one guy that just keeps sticking out week after week. He did it again this past Friday night, so he will most likely be our SCR Star of the Week, but there's going to be several other guys that I want to mention as well that had standout performances from this past Friday night. We'll also name our next game of the week. That's going to be the first thing we do here in this next segment, so be on the lookout for that. But just like I said, so many amazing things to recap from this past Friday night and look ahead to. So let's go ahead and dive in. That's right, so Oak Mountain and Thompson this Friday night over at Homewood Park will be our game of the week, a big 7A Region 3 matchup. This is a game last year that Oak Mountain was able to win 30-28 on a last-second Hail Mary from Jackson Kimbrell to Ethan Duncan. It was one of 3 games that Thompson lost by 3 points or less as they struggled to close games out or win those close games last year. So Thompson's definitely got a little bit of redemption on their mind. Oak Mountain wants to do the same thing this year, but Thompson a much more improved team this season than they were a year ago. Oak Mountain coming off a tough 7-0 loss to Vestavia this past Friday night. It's a game where it was a defensive battle, to say the least. You know, the offenses couldn't really move the ball, and Oak Mountain probably outplayed Vestavia in that game. The only score, a deflected pass early in the game with about 9 minutes left in the first quarter by Oak Mountain, leads to an interception. Vestavia gets good field position. They take advantage, score. Nothing happens the rest of the game. Oak Mountain was able to put together a few drives while Vestavia didn't do really much of anything the rest of the game, but Oak Mountain's best chance to tie it up came late in that game. They fumble the ball inside their own 5-yard line. Can't come back and tie that one. They fall 7-0. Their first loss of the game prevents them from their first 4-0 start in school history. I'm not sure that really affects them at all, but definitely would have been cool to see for them. Thompson coming in off a 40-13 thumping of Mountain Brook, region foe. Only lost to Hoover by a few points the week before. So I mean, that was a good Mountain Brook team that Thompson was able to dominate on Friday night, and it starts with Ahmad Edwards. That receiver's just doing everything right now. He had another strong performance, 153 yards on 11 catches, and it doesn't happen without his quarterback, Talia Tagovailoa. Another strong game passing, his 3rd consecutive to start the season, over 200 yards. He goes for 242, 1 rushing touchdown, but Shadrick Bird was one of the keys for them in that win. He gets 164 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. He and Joseph Ford have now two games in a row combined for 200 plus yards. They went for 254 together in this last one. So this matchup's going to be interesting because Oak Mountain's got the kind of team that can slow down that Thompson offense, not simply because they're the best defense that Thompson will have seen so far, but because Oak Mountain runs that option style offense. They can go on those long drives sometimes and take a lot of time off the clock, and that's what they need to do. Their games have been some of the quickest so far this year because of that, and if they can do that, limit Thompson's offensive possessions, then they'll have a good shot to win it. But this is a different animal from anything Oak Mountain's seen this year, and while it's going to be a different animal for Thompson's offense to face this good of a defense, I just think Thompson's a little bit further down the road. They're going to be starting off. It's their first road game, which could play a factor, but I just see them starting off 4-0 and moving to 3-0 in region play. And Oak Mountain, while they most likely will lose this game, they're still very much in the region conversation. After this one, they could reel off a couple wins. They've still got some tough games ahead, but that being said, I think they could still challenge Mountain Brook for that 4th place position. I think Vestavia is going to fade. Their offense just hasn't shown enough, but overall, right now in that region, I do think that Thompson, Mountain Brook, Spain Park, and Hoover will be the 4 teams to come out on top. But it's going to be an exciting night out at Homewood Park. I hope and plan to be out there for that one with a Facebook Live video on Friday night, giving you some details and looking ahead to everything. But going to be a fantastic matchup to see how Thompson handles that defense and what Oak Mountain can do to try to slow down the Thompson offense. So another big 7A game for us in Shelby County this week is going to be Spain Park and Mountain Brook. Spain Park will be traveling to Mountain Brook this Friday night. Another big matchup in that same 7A Region 3 classification for those teams. So it's going to be a matchup to see which team can have the lesser of the letdowns after last week's loss. You know, Mountain Brook comes in with 2 straight losses, and they fall 40-13 to Thompson last week in a blowout. Spain Park, on the other hand, a very tough, close, hard-fought game with Hoover. They lose that one in the final minutes. You know, if it wasn't for George Pickens, Hoover probably doesn't win that game. A 3rd and 25, he's able to pick up an amazing catch between 2 defenders, comes down with it. They go on to score, go ahead 27-24 at that point. Spain Park can't do anything else after that to take the lead back or tie the game. So Spain Park falls in a heartbreaker. I still think they're our best team in Shelby County, along with Thompson and Briarwood right now, despite the loss. They played Hoover toe-to-toe, probably should have won that game. If they were able to hold on there at the end, they would have. That being said, like I said, which team can focus on moving forward, coming off of big losses? Last year, Mountain Brook was able to win this one 23-21 after Spain Park had that heartbreaking loss to Hoover, while Mountain Brook was coming off of a win. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, but I do think Spain Park's the better team. Braxton Barker finally showed that he can beat you with his arm, even though they didn't win this game this past week. He goes for 278 and 2 touchdowns through the air passing. They only run for 71 yards. Hoover had 170-plus yards rushing. Spain Park only has 71 in that game on Friday night. That's something this season they've combined to go over 100 yards between D'Ari Johnson and Jalen Henderson in every game. They didn't do that this past Friday night. It was a big-time key. I do think that they're going to get back to that. They're going to go more towards the pro-style offense this Friday night. I think it will give Mountain Brook some trouble, especially with Mountain Brook, the way they gave up 254 yards to Thompson. Spain Park's going to get back to the ground game. It's going to open up the passing lanes as well for Barker. I expect Spain Park to have a big bounce-back win this Friday night against Mountain Brook. So in week 4 of the season, Pelham's defense did exactly what it needed to do, something it couldn't do in its 2 losses on the season so far. In the final 2 minutes of a game, they stop Helena. They pick up a 29-25 win after stopping the Huskies on 4th and 8 in their own Pelham's territory. In their loss to Homewood earlier this season, Pelham gives up a touchdown with 40 seconds left to play. They lose that one by 7 points. Last week, they also do the same thing, give up a touchdown with just under 2 minutes left. They lose that game in a very close matchup as well, 7 points in that one. So in this game, you had to know their doubt was there a little bit. Even Coach Causey said after the game that if they had that happen again, he didn't know if they could handle it. And they didn't have to worry about that. Pelham picks up a huge defensive stand. They beat Helena again, 2nd year in a row. They take down the Huskies there. This time they do it on their home field. Pelham trending upward this year. I've been impressed with them each week. They could easily be 4-0 right now. Instead, they sit at 2-2, but more importantly, 1-1 in region play. Now this Friday night, they get a Chelsea team that's just struggling all over the place right now. Their defense has been so good at Chelsea early in the season, but overall, the offense it just can't click. And this past Friday night, they lose a tough matchup, 27-20 to Benjamin Russell. 27-0 to Benjamin Russell. Their first shutout since 2013 for Chelsea over there. Their offense is just not heading in the right direction. That leads me to think that Pelham's going to be able to handle another one this week. This is a very important game for both teams. If Pelham can win this game and prove to 2-1 in region play, I have a really good feeling they're going to make the playoffs this year, where if Chelsea loses this game, they pretty much lose all hope of that. So I know Coach Elmore is one of the greatest coaches around. I really hope that he can get that offense turned around. If he's going to do it, it has to be this week. But right now, there's just too much inconsistency at the quarterback position and all around on the offensive side of the ball. So I like Pelham to take this one Friday night. Should be a good contest nonetheless with the way these two defenses play ball. Matthew Rye had a solid game rushing the ball. Nicholas Blackburn as well. Both go for Blackburn goes for 96 and a touchdown, while Rye goes for 104 and 2 touchdowns for Pelham this past Friday night. So I like it to be a low-scoring kind of game with the way that Pelham's going to run the ball and Chelsea's offense struggles and these two defenses play. So should be a fun, entertaining game for everybody out at Chelsea High School this Friday night. I know I'm looking forward to it. No matter what the outcome is, it's going to be a fun one to watch. So we'll probably go a little bit quicker through the rest of these just for time's sake. Our next game is going to be in 6A between Homewood and Helena this Friday night, an out-of-region matchup between those two teams. And, Homewood's played great to start the season. They pick up a big 28-6 win over Jackson-Olin this past Friday night, another ranked team. They're 4-0 right now. Helena 1-2 coming into this matchup. So should be interesting. I do think they're a lot more even on paper than their records show. And it showed from the first game with Homewood and Pelham. I would have expected Homewood to win that game bigger, as good as they've turned out. Instead, it was a lot closer. I think this one's going to be a close matchup, especially if Luke Steinba keeps playing the way he's playing at Helena at the quarterback position right now. I just think he's playing really good, especially as a young sophomore. He's getting some great experience, and I like this one to be closer than a lot of people may think, but I do think Homewood's going to take it in the end. So I think the biggest surprise for me this past Friday night was the way that Briarwood handled Winona. A top 5 matchup between those two. Number 1 Briarwood, number 5 Winona. Rematch of last year's game. Briarwood wins 15-14 in game 1, loses 14-8 in game 2. So the offenses weren't really a big factor last season. It was the defenses. And with both teams coming into this game last Friday night, giving up Briarwood 14-7 in their first 2 matchups of the season, and Winona only giving up 12 in each of their 2 games coming in. I expected a 17-10, 17-14 kind of game. That's not what happens. One team didn't score very many points. That was Winona. They get shut out. Briarwood wins 34-0, makes a huge statement as the number 1 team in the 5A classification. They look like the number 1 team after that performance. Michael Ayers has a huge game, 10-14, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns against a very good Winona defense. And I was really impressed with Andrew Sherrod and Gabriel Russell defensively. Sherrod made several big pass breakups and a huge pick 6 in that game in the first half, while Russell was able to chase around Carlos Rogers, the good Winona quarterback, all night and bring him down. Looked like one of the best, speediest linebackers I've seen. Now Briarwood gets Fairfield this Friday night. Fairfield comes in 1-2. It's a game Briarwood won 27-0 last year. Their defense is just as good. If they can shut out Winona, then they can easily shut out Fairfield. I think Fairfield is an improved team from a season ago, but Briarwood if they play like they did last week, they're clicking on all cylinders right now, and I can't see them losing this ball game. So our next biggest game, really outside of that 7A classification where we had several big matchups, is going to be Calera and Demopolis this Friday night. This is a game that Calera lost last year 38-13, and this past Friday night, Calera didn't look nearly as good as they did against Dallas County the week before, where they won 53-7. Instead, they struggle, only beat Central Tuscaloosa, who was 0-3 coming into that matchup. Now 0-4. They only win that game 22-14. Still, though, their offense had some good things that they showed with Cornelius Brown at the quarterback position, D. Mickens back at the running back position, and Tyler Agnew added a second punch to that combination in the backfield as well. They have a good offense. Their defense still looks solid overall, but now they get the best team in the region, Demopolis team. Like I said, beat them 38-13 last year. So far this season, they're 3-1. Their last 3 games, they've given up 12 combined points, a shutout, and then 6 in their next 2. So this Demopolis defense is really good, and I think they're going to give Calera fits all night. I do think Calera really needs to balance things out like they have over the last 3 weeks or so. If they can have a balanced attack and keep Demopolis kind of off balance a little bit, then they have a chance, but I do think Demopolis is the better team in this one. Not to say that Calera isn't a great team. I do think they can still make a strong run to the playoffs, and this is a good game, though. If they can win this one, they have a strong chance at winning that region championship, and this is normally the deciding factor in that region. So it should be an entertaining game, but I do think Demopolis is the better squad overall. Our last 5A game this week is going to be Shelby County traveling to Winona, who we just talked about a couple of minutes ago. Shelby County bounces back in a big way this past Friday night with a 27-21 win over Moody. Big region win for the Wildcats there. They bounced back from the ugly 56-21 loss that they had the week before that to St. Clair County. So Shelby County shows the improvement they needed to show, get a big region win. I don't think they're going to beat Winona Friday night. I do think they have the kind of team that could keep it close, especially with Winona coming off the tough losses past Friday night to Briarwood. Carlos Rogers just didn't look very good on the offensive side for Winona. So if Shelby County can show any kind of defensive presence in the backfield, I think that could really help them out in this game. I'm not sure they have enough to win it. I really don't think they will, but it could give them some confidence moving forward in region play during the second half and give them a strong chance to make the playoffs if they can show some improvement in this game and play Winona to a tight contest. Similarly to the Wildcats at Shelby County, Montevallo did exactly what they needed to do this past Friday night as they take down BB Comer 42-12, answering to a loss, 51-6 loss to American Christian that still baffles my mind. I'm not sure what went on in that game, but Montevallo, a much better squad than that. They show it this past Friday night. Now they get an 0-3 midfield team that they should be able to handle pretty easily too. This one a region matchup, so they had that nice little break there where they could get some confidence back in a non-region game this past Friday night. Now they're back in region play. I expect them to carry that confidence over and pick up a big win against midfield at home this Friday night. Vincent falls this past Friday night 55-14 to Lynette. The good news for Vincent, they've knocked out the 2 toughest games of their season already through 3 games now. So 1-2 on the season. They lose to Lafayette and Lynette. They beat Pleasant Valley in week 1 of the season. So they're sitting okay right now. Now they hit a stretch where I think they can really just relax, play football, and make some noise, really. I think they can reel off some region wins here. It starts this Friday night. They take on Fayetteville at home. Should be a very good matchup. Fayetteville comes in 1-2 as well, but they've given up 48 and 44 points in their last 2 games. I really like Vincent's defense to kind of give them a win here. Vincent, despite the 55 points against Lynette last week, I throw that out the window. Despite that, through the first 2 games, they looked really good against a good Lafayette team and against Pleasant Valley. So I expect the defense to keep them in it and their offense to really score their most points of the season and their most points in a while, too, to be honest with you. So I really like Vincent to get that first region win of the season and reel off some more wins after this week. So after going through, putting together this video, I looked at all the stats, and I know at the top of the video I said that I was going to pick one guy as our SCR Star of the Week, but as I went through and looked at more and more, just so many playmakers stood out to me, and it just wouldn't have been fair to all of them to leave anybody off of this list. So I'm going to make all of these guys, as well as one unit, our SCR Star of the Week. They're all going to share the honor this week for such outstanding performances. There was just too many good things to ignore this past Friday night. And we'll start with our best one, and this is who I was leading off with, saying that was probably going to be the SCR Star of the Week overall by himself. Now he gets to share the wealth with everybody else, but Ahmad Edwards out at Thompson, I mean, stand up. You are having a fantastic season right now. This past Friday night, 11 catches, 153 yards. The impressive part isn't just what he did in that game, it's what he's done up to that point. 150 yards receiving per game so far this season. His first game of the year, he gets 136. Second game, he gets 163. This past week, 153. So 130-plus receiving yards in every single game this season. And that's against some 7A talent, too. So he's having a fantastic season. The best receiver that we have in the county right now. He's getting some sharing time with his cousin there, Mo Edwards at Thompson, as well as having a fantastic season. They have a great quarterback throwing them the ball in Talia Tagovailoa. He had his 3rd consecutive game with 240-plus yards. He goes for 249 and a touchdown. This past Friday night, he's gone over 300 in each of his first 2 games. So he's having a good season as well. But also out at Thompson, we've got Shadrick Bird, and an unbelievable season for him so far. He had a great performance this past Friday night, running for 164 yards and 3 touchdowns. He and Joseph Ford together have combined to go over 200 yards in every game this season. I believe. I know they have the last 2 games. I can't remember exactly the first game, but I know they have the past 2 games. So those two guys together are studs, and Bird's really starting to show some great things there at Thompson. Moving away from the Warriors, we'll go down to the AISA first, start with Cornerstone. They pick up a big win this past Friday night, and a lot of that was due to Jake Blankenship. He has 400-plus all-purpose yards in that game, so congrats to him. A very good performance for him on the night. Defensively picked up a pick 6, was able to do so many things offensively and in the return game as well. So good game for him. Also another game, very impressed by Michael Ayers at Briarwood. Leads Briarwood, #1 team in 5A, to a big 34-0 win over Winona, a team they lost to last year in the semifinals. he told me after the game that, of course, the redemption factor played into it, but he had no clue that he could expect that kind of performance, not only from himself, but his offensive line, his receivers, his running backs, his defense. Everybody played well for Briarwood in that game. Their defense deserves a shout-out as well. Gabriel Russell and Andrew Sherrod, as I mentioned earlier, both of those guys, fantastic games on the defensive side of the ball. In a loss, we have Braxton Barker. He went off for 278 yards, 2 touchdowns with his arm in that game. Very impressed by him. He's been in the 150-plus yard range, in between 150 to 200 through the first few weeks of the season. So he kind of emerged this week, had a strong game with his arm. I expect his running game to help him out a little bit more like they have in the past moving forward this season as well. So the last SCR star we're going to mention is the Pelham defense. You know, as I mentioned in their segment earlier, this season, Homewood opening game, they lose. Final 40 seconds of that game, they lose that one by 7 points. Defense gives up a late score. A week ago against Benjamin Russell, they do the same thing and fall in a tough one there as well. In the last 2 minutes of that game, lose by 7 points in that one as well. So this past Friday night, very impressed by the way they were able to make that stand. 2 minutes left. They make a stand against the Helena offense inside their the Pelham territory there. They make that defensive stand, able to hold on for a 29-25 win there. So all of those guys, congrats. Like I said, so many great performances this past Friday night. I just wanted to give everybody a shout out. Keep up the good work. I'm taking notice of it. I know that there's a lot of scouts, a lot of parents, a lot of coaches, and other teams around the state taking notice of how great all of you guys are playing here in Shelby County. So keep up the good work. And as always, I'm excited to see what's to come the rest of the season. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Fantastic week this past Friday night. It's going to even get better as we move forward through the season. Hope you're excited this Friday night. Be on the lookout for our Facebook Live video this Friday night coming at you from Herdmont Park, our game of the week there between Thompson and Oak Mountain, as well as all of our great coverage Friday night. But that's going to do it for this episode. I appreciate you tuning in, and hope you'll stick with us the rest of the season.